Welcome to the first video in our three-part feature, Fact or Facade. We're going to be visiting 3 of the grandest stately homes in Britain, all of which have a claim to the title of having the longest facade of any country house in the UK.
In the series of videos, we'll take a definitive measurement of the facades of each of the houses, and we'll explore how these amazing structures are making themselves viable in a 21st century world. Each house has a fascinating history, and each follows a different strategy designed to secure its place in the modern world.
Wentworth Woodhouse near Rotherham in South Yorkshire is a magnificent stately home, with what's reputed to be the longest facade of any country house in Britain. There are actually 2 frontages to the house. The less well-known west front, which is Baroque in style, was completed in 1735 and is the smaller of the 2. This contains rooms that form the private living spaces for the families of the Marquises of Rockingham and the Earls Fitzwilliam. The more familiar east front, completed around 1760, is a grand Palladian frontage which contains the state rooms, a bachelor wing and the service wing, all of which were used by the family for entertaining on a lavish scale.
In Dan Cruikshank's book, The Country House Revealed, he describes Wentworth Woodhouse as an 18th century economic and political powerhouse. He also refers to the building as a vote-winning machine. These are accurate descriptions and help give some context as to why an 18th century aristocrat might need, rather than simply want, a house on the scale that Wentworth Woodhouse was conceived.
Vast country houses were more than simply expressions of the wealth and power of their owners. They were certainly places where extravagant entertainments could take place, but in the 18th century they were also hugely effective at canvassing votes from the relatively few landowning males who were at that time entitled to vote.
Yeah, a house like Wentworth Woodhouse, I mean, it was very much a sort of political statement. This was a Whig house, and the important thing was trying to get the Whig vote out and to encourage people to actually vote in the way you wanted them to. In the 18th century, the electorate was very small, and so actually if you built a large enough house, you could probably fit most of the people you wanted to influence in the house. And I mean, a place like this, you created a huge space. So you've got the huge marble hall at the centre of it, where the generality of your vote could be gathered together. And then actually those who were socially superior and more influential, you could actually sort of take them further and further within the house and give them special privileges so that you could influence them and make them vote in the way you wanted them to. So, I mean, it really was the equivalent of a party political broadcast.
So the scale of Wentworth Woodhouse and many other places like it across the country had a practical purpose when they were built. They simply weren't vanity projects. Throughout 2023, we're testing out a few myths and alleged facts about this incredible place. It's claimed to have the longest facade of any country house in Britain, is what we aim to prove or disprove by the end of the project.
One of the contenders was Blenheim Palace, which I mean is obviously a vast house. But actually it was very interesting looking at photographs of Blenheim online, that there's quite a lot to one side of the facade which never appears in the photographs, as people don't consider it to form part of the facade. So I thought that that sort of excluded that from the running when I sort of measured it on the map.
During the 20th century, seismic changes to the economic, social and political landscape in Britain caused serious problems for the owners of buildings such as these, and around 2,000 country houses were destroyed. Even the Duke of Westminster, one of the richest men in the land, chose to demolish his own colossal country seat, Eaton Hall in Cheshire, because its upkeep was impractical. He replaced it with a smaller house on the same site.
Each of the 3 houses in our final list has 2 frontages, but just how long is the longest of these? Which contains the actual facade? And how do we go about measuring it?
I'm going to get in terrible trouble here. I've had sleepless nights about this, thinking about the fantastic houses that we're looking at and how long each of these facades is. So if you think about the word facade, it's obvious it comes from face. So facade, I looked it up, was based on an old English word that was then civilized by the Italians or the French and brought back to Britain. And I think it means, and I'm the one judging this, the principal face of a country house. And you can ask 50 architects and you'll get 100 definitions of which is the principal facade. But you've asked me to choose, so I'm choosing. Now, the key thing about country houses in particular isn't the measurement, it's the proportion. So you'll see from all 3 buildings, they're in bays, and they have very definite mathematical relationships between the elements of the building and the height of the building, and there are interrelationships of the doors and the windows. I'm fairly sure that a mason, when they were first setting out the building, would have used a chain, and it would have been an accurate measurement based on feet and inches. So I haven't got a chain, and we'd be here all day doing that. So there was a development of a chain, and that was called a trundle wheel. And everybody would have seen them. You'd have seen people on the motorway measuring out long lengths. And it's simply a measuring tool with a wheel, and it's quite accurate. It has developed over the years, so I'm going to use a trundle wheel to measure these fantastic country houses.
So let's take a look at our first contender, Stowe House. Long-standing financial problems for the owners of Stowe House in Buckinghamshire forced the sale of the house and its contents in 1921 and 1922. It became Stowe School the following year with 99 students and a staff of 9. Today, the site is cared for by a partnership of 3 entities: the school, the National Trust, who have looked after the historic garden since 1989, and the Stowe House Preservation Trust, which was created in 1997 to implement a 6-phase external and internal restoration plan and to open the house for public access and engagement.
I'm Simon Wales, I'm the Chief Executive of Stowe House Preservation Trust. So Stowe House has made itself viable by being this unusual combination of being a public visitor attraction but also an independent school, and it's perhaps quite an unusual relationship for how those two work together. But we welcome 12,000 visitors a year who will come on tours of the historic spaces here, whilst also these buildings operate as a school all year round. So the challenges of that are that it's a very busy building, and we have to ensure that everything can run alongside each other, which involves lots of relationship management, lots of communication, stakeholder discussions. We work very closely with the school. We consider ourselves colleagues of the school, but the Preservation Trust is a separate organisation. It's set up specifically to lead on the restoration and the maintenance, but also to lead on the visitor engagement and interpretation. And the school understand that and are very keen that we can also deliver Stowe House alongside the school's work. What I'm most proud of would be the recently completed State Dining Room, and that really marks the end of what was envisaged as a 25-year programme of restorations of the main exterior and interior spaces of Stowe House. So that dining room, which has been £1.2 million of raised funds, all raised via the Preservation Trust, it's looking spectacular, and it's really the final jigsaw piece in presenting the staterooms as envisaged, now that we have the tapestries back in a wallpaper form and everything restored. There are more rooms that could be restored. There's an endless amount of restoration really that we can do here. But for now, that's the staterooms really covered, and we're very proud to be able to present them looking appropriate in their splendour.
To give context to the sheer scale of the house, we brought together 27 Preservation Trust staff and pupils from the school. They barely make an impression. To cover the entire north front of Stowe House in a straight line, we'd need over 300 pupils and staff. Meanwhile, Tony sets about measuring Stowe's more famous south front. But at this stage, he's not letting on which frontage is the longest, or which he considers to be the main facade of the house. Only Tony knows the actual measurements taken, and he shares them in confidence with Simon. We'll need to wait until the final video in the series to reveal the winner of the title, Longest Facade of Any Country House in Britain.
Stowe House is an incredible survivor, and its story as an independent school and as a visitor attraction is a fascinating one.
Join us next time when we travel up to Scotland to investigate the claim that Hopetoun House, near Edinburgh, has the longest facade of any country house in Britain.